Hello everyone, it is time to look at what might be one of my favorite characters of the year so far. And I feel like I've said that at least a couple of times now, so I'm sure I'm just adding 1,000 at this point. So today we're here to talk about Ferris. We're going to talk about her equipment, we're going to talk about all of that good stuff. But first, today's video is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends. There's something, I don't know, joke about the fact that I don't make any money. Alright, so today, Faris. Faris is the newest character to be added for the Final Fantasy V collaboration, and yeah, already have her. Pretty excited. Her limit burst looks absolutely awesome, and I'm definitely feeling like this is going to be one of my more favorite characters, but whether or not here's the question. Ever since the 3rd anniversary, 100 cost limited time collaboration characters are a thing. Sephiroth has been incredibly overpowered. King Bradley has been incredibly overpowered. And now we come to Ferris. So is Ferris going to be the next incredibly overpowered character? Well, that's what we're here today to find out. And let's start by taking a look at Ferris's equipment. So Ferris is a 100 cost UR character, limited water elemental character, 3 move, 1 jump. Primary job is like Pirate, Queen, or something like that, Paladin, and Pugilist for subs. Sword, considered in the weapon group of the Red Mage sword group, which isn't terrible. We're going to talk a little bit about why that's good in a second here. Hat, clothing, and accessories. And TMR, well, we saw the TMR a little bit there. It is a pair of boots, which is considered to be accessory, not clothing. The more you know. 310 HP, 8 defense, 12 accuracy, and 8 critical evade. Honestly, a pretty solidly statted piece of equipment, especially given what Ferris kind of wants to do. And Ferris is already packing a fair amount of accuracy, so this boosts that a little bit more HP and more defense, which is going to be real nice, as you're about to see. And critical evade is always a fine thing that we don't know to. As for the ability, it's tough to say whether I really like this. Increasing max HP and restore max HP by 25% is an ability that is actually seen on certain other characters that may or may not be in the water element. It also grants haste, so it's a kind of a package deal here. With Ferris, I don't know if this is something that I particularly like that much on her. It seems okay, but I'm not really all that excited. So I think this TMR, given that there are ways to punish and cancel haste, this feels just kind of underwhelming, and I'm not super excited about it. So hopefully the unit makes up for it. As for her master ability, well, master ability here, as we can see, is increase attack by 10%, AoE by 10%. Dream enhancement is increase HP by 15%, which is a pretty good overall amount for what this unit is essentially going to be wanting. And increasing healing power by 10. Now that may not seem like much, but there's probably a reason why it is what it is. So yeah, as I'm just loading something into the background, let's come back over here and take a peek, starting off by just bringing in the friend unit Ferris and jumping all the way down to our water party to see what she looks like in a full water comp. So 9,550 HP with 1,583 attack, 30 defense, 18 spirit, 101 speed, 314 dexterity, and 350 luck with a bonus to move. Also should be noted that when we plop her in this party, we're also looking at a 43% sword resistance, 10% pierce, 22% to strike, and 15% against magic, with a 40% to fire, as well as a fairly decent amount of resistance across the board. I think that's overall, I quite like her resistances. Also knowing that the Final Fantasy V accessory is going to give her human resistance, as well as missile resistance. These resistances seem quite good, and I'm pretty happy overall with it. We're going to see the kind of effect that this will have very shortly, because we will be placing this character against Dark this time and seeing how much damage Dark can do against her. Now we are running 140s and we are running mostly offensive VCs, so you can check and see that the overall stats look kind of like this when we throw this in this party. Now, of course, we've seen this Dark party be pretty offensively capable. Here's Sephiroth for reference sake. Here is Majin Vina. And last but not least, here's Raph. So overall, I think that this party is looking generally pretty nice, except for the Raph VCs don't make a lick of sense. That's probably just my bad. Now that I think about it, yeah, you know what? It is kind of my bad. So let's just throw some quick VCs that I know are immediately defensive ones. But as you can see, based on these VCs and everything and what kind of speed we're getting, Ferris is actually a fairly quick character and pretty decently attack and HP. It is quite it is quite dangerous for her to have a high amount of HP, and this is where we bring this into the fold to talk about, which is her weapon. And this sword is not exclusive to her, it can be equipped by other characters, and it only has 2 versions, which we haven't seen that too terribly often. But it has Assault and Vitality, 155 HP or 165 attack, as well as 18 Accuracy Standard, which is pretty accurate sword, and 3 crit. Now, overall, the sword gives 20 defense penetration, which is nothing that exciting. But it does give Human Killer on physical attacks, which is definitely way more interesting. But the big thing here is just how defensive this sword is for Ferris. Defense debuff resistance, spirit debuff resistance, and AoE resistance when HP is over 70% will give a defense and debuff or spirit debuff, whereas when it's under, it's going to give AoE resistance. So one way or another, it's essentially giving her a lot of survivability. And 100% debuff resistance is really scary and kind of hard to get through. If the ability goes off too early or too late, that's used in the correct fashion, the enemy team is going to have a hard time killing Ferris. If you combine that with the idea that we could potentially throw this with Amnilus, which gives a HP recovery just off the top of my head, or if we combine this with another type of unit that just can keep her alive longer and over 70%, Ferris is actually really, really difficult to kill, and this works out generally great for water. So jumping back in, let's talk about abilities. And we'll start with support skills. So first off, her main support skill is a slash attack resistance penetration by 40, makes her a better damage dealer, defense penetration by 40, again, and 8 increase AoE resistance by 30 when HP is over 70%, which is generally a lot of AoE resistance and makes her very difficult to kill and potentially quite dangerous against opponents as well. In combination with her weapon, it's not like she isn't stacking a fair amount of slash attack resistance penetration on her own and defense penetration, while still remaining a high amount of defensive capability. Defense of 12 and HP of 12%, which, given the fact that she has 100% defense, debuff resistance is actually quite valuable and a legitimately possible one that you might want to run if you're willing to sacrifice agility and move, which is her other main job's support skill. Now, this one, increase of accuracy, I don't think is too important, but it is nice if you're ever going up against fire evade. Basically, all the evasion that they can muster is kind of pretty well matched by the amount of accuracy that Ferris has through VCs or equipment and all of that. And last one, if you want more offensive, you can go HP and attack. I think that all of these are pretty valuable. You're always running this one because it's just way too good. But a combination of these 4 can be used in different situations that make Ferris fairly flexible for who she's dealing with. As for counter abilities, the strike one, I'm just going to flat out ignore for right now because it's just not worth it. But either Paladins or her main job Paladin allows countering physical damage by decreasing the damage by 45%. Good in specific spots, but overall, her main counter of just countering all damage on a 50% chance of happening, with reducing the damage taken by 20%, is almost certainly the thing that you're always going to be running. This ability is just way too good, and I love it a lot. And yeah, it's kind of nice that Bart's has this thing of countering physical damage, Lena magical damage, and Ferris both. It feels very, very cool that the three characters have been designed in such a way. We'll come back to the limit burst in a second. Pugilist does have an increase of HP and defense, which, given what we talked about earlier with Faris just having a really good amount of like keeping her defense strong, even if they have 100% defense penetration, it doesn't matter. This is potentially really good. However, I don't like a ton of other stuff. The HP heal is kind of interesting, but I don't know if Ferris would ever particularly use it, and that will require testing. The move to unit panel I really hate because I just don't think it works well with Ferris. I don't think it's ever worth it, and neither, while this one with the increase of modifier while absorbing % of the damage will be done, Ferris is going to have to get dangerously close to get this, and it might be good, and I'm going to keep an eye on it, but for now I'm saying Pugilist is my least interesting one. Paladin did not give her Immortal Spirit. It essentially gave access to stun, a restore HP for self, so either that or Pugilist, she has options for, or avenues for self-healing. As for Sentinel, this in combination with her overall resistances is kind of scary, because she can easily stack about 75 defense with this, and with 100% defense resistance penetration, you're not gonna get through that wall super easily. She does have a Tract Blade, which is the only thing in her entire kit which generates hate, which is why I don't consider her to be a tank, but there you go. She has increased the max HP, which once again, I guess haste on her TMR, okay. But the last thing that I really like is reducing physical damage taken by 50% for 3 turns, as well as critical evasion of 15. Sephiroth has this ability and it works generally well. Sephiroth also gets AP restoration, so that's, just better overall. But I really do think that, okay, hold that thought for a second. What are we giving up for it? Well, we're giving up an ability with fairly limited range that decreases defense by 35 for 3 turns. Not bad by any means, but it's also a curve skill, which is good, but yeah, as if I've ever mentioned that in many of my videos. I mean, it's a good skill, but I think it's a worthy trade-off for some of the other stuff you're getting. As for this one, it has steel on it, which cool thematically, but yeah, skip all of this, either Paladin or Pugilist, and this will be something I will be testing over the next little bit, of disabling certain abilities and seeing whether or not it ends up working out really well for her or not. Pugilist does have the advantage of potentially synergizing with an offensive AI, while also absorbing part of the damage and potentially making her really hard to kill again. The HP restore is good in certain situations, and increasing HP and defense for multiple turns will just make her harder to kill. So Pugilist is definitely not bad. But Paladin also has its fair share of good stuff. Restore of HP, stun, increasing defense and spirit by 45 for multiple turns, or for a single turn, which makes it really difficult for her to deal any damage against her. Increasing her max HP, which, given her sword, is a huge benefit, or just reducing the damage with a barrier. She doesn't have guts, but does have barrier, and as we're about to see, she's a little bit more. So breaking into her main job, into the stuff she always has. Her main attack is an ability that if it kills a unit, it does give an AP restoration. Not too terribly much, but pretty nice to just get some extra AP going. Here, her other skill increases her slash attack by 25 for 3 turns, as well as her agility by 25%, which is a overall pretty good net boost. Here, This ability, with pretty decent range on it that is a triple hitter, does increase defense penetration by 50, so she can get through another opponent's defense pretty nicely with a pretty good mod on it and some chaining to potentially work with some other characters. While this ability is also pretty good, slash attack and strike resistance of 20% for 3 turns for herself and allies, as well as giving herself the ability to dispel all buffs, haste, physical damage, and magical damage for 3 turns on her other abilities. Yeah, this is pretty great here. Giving her a dispel effect is a generally nice thing. An increased hit chance ability that you can see gets upgraded here from a certain AoE to a better AoE, which is pretty nice. And last but not least, the job level 25 ability, which we'll just go down here and just look at the big version of it. Grants Protect and Shell of 25% damage reduction for multiple turns, which including her defense, debuff resistance, as well as all of the other things that we've mentioned over the course of this video. She's a tough one to kill. But hey, let's also give her decreased AP consumption if she has Protector Shell active, so if you don't debuff it, she gets a major discount on her kit, AoE resistance of 20, and accuracy increase of 30. Now, a couple of these abilities do cast the Sildra ability too, and we'll take a look at that once we get into battle, but my overall thoughts are as such. Ferris is missing certain key things, such as barrier removal, as well as guts removal and re-raise. Those are problems that she just generally has. But overall, her kit feels really versatile and really strong, and she is one of the most defensive characters I've ever seen. I don't know exactly how I want to build her with runes, but something tells me stacking HP and damage is the best way to go, because at this point, she is very, very capable of taking care of herself. And in combination with the correct units, I think that she can even go so far as to be fairly close to immortal. Combining her with a good tank to essentially soak up initial damage will weaken the later parts of teams to actually have any capability of dealing with her. Teams that generally rely on haste or just rely on the tried and true method in a lot of places on JP of Immortal Spirit, Guts, or Re-Raise. Don't have removal for a lot of times for Protect and Shell, which can be really advantageous for her, and she can synergize fairly well with ice or water / base characters or potentially magic characters. So yeah, that's a general thoughts on her. I think that she is just really quite strong at this point, and I'm curious to see, once people are building their own, exactly how strong Ferris ends up being. But let's get into battle and take a look here. Obviously, my Ferris at this point in time is not super well built, but I am going to do a secondary video later, kind of comparing how her growth works. But here, let's get into this. Let's take a peek on this map going up against Sephiroth. So first off, without doing anything, what kind of damage is Sephiroth doing against Ferris here? Oh, 140 Ferris. So we're looking at here, we can take a look around and, without any debuff or any buffing or anything, get an idea that Ferris is still resisting a fair amount of damage right from the get-go. But let's get moving on some of the stuff that we're always casting, always, because it's a day that ends in Y. So jumping over here, we'll just get Raph, building up some stuff, move Astrius a little bit over here. We're gonna want for him to cast one of his other abilities, that ability when she's a little bit closer. Excuse me. And now let's get Ferris casting her big job level 25 one first, because this is giving us Protect and Shell and will give us an idea for some of her defensive capabilities. We're also going to get some of the other stuff going in a second here, but yeah, we first got to get this all ready. So next up, And this is a little bit faster of a map, so we are going to get a bunch of enemy turns interrupting us. Also, this is one of my favorite Final Fantasy songs ever. Not too terribly relevant to anything that's going on here, but yeah. So immediately you can see that once Ferris starts getting in to just the battle here, we can see that already she is reducing the amount of damage a considerable amount from what Sephiroth was originally capable of doing. And again, any time that she is capable of staying over a certain amount, she is getting a lot of, debuff protection as well as, and if she does lose a bunch of HP, then she's getting a ton of AoE protection. So we can see there the kind of damage that Sephiroth's AoE is doing against himself, funnily enough, which is, just tickles my fancy, and versus other characters that don't quite have it. And again, while you have to remember that we have cast one of her key abilities that she is basically always going to be casting, but she hasn't cast, if we did have Paladin on her, we could also cast that barrier and get a fair amount of extra protection going against her as well in a combination of barrier and protected shell. Providing that she casts her barrier first and the protected shell second, it really is quite long lasting into the into the battle. So let's jump in here. We want to look for his single target attacks, see what kind of damage we're doing just to get through the AoE resistance. But you can see overall Ferris is standing very strong against a 140 cost Sephiroth, while she herself has a fair amount of highly damaged VCs. So that's a good turn. Let's take a look at Preen. What's Preen doing? Well, about 2,000 points of damage, about 4,000 points of damage, and about 1,600 points of damage. Not bad overall. With her limit burst. Skip ahead. Alright, Raph. Now, Raph is a magical base character, and she isn't our strongest magical character, but even if you can get an idea for the type of damage that she is doing against other characters, and here you can see that even though Ferris, it seems to be a fairly defensive character towards physical-based attacks, she actually is pretty good at still staying fairly strong against magical attacks too. And if you just give her magical armor as well, she's staying fairly resilient against it. So skipping ahead, we'll also cast this ability, giving her a little bit more HPs. And now, let's get to Ferris's turn. So, Ferris's Limit Burst. Now, this is one of the ones we didn't talk about earlier, but Ferris's Limit Burst has the added benefit of increasing her defense penetration by 50 for this attack. It is AoE, and we are getting a decrease of CT by 50 for targets while increasing her own CT by 250. Basically, a massive tempo swing that can be used in great effect to steal units of their turn and give her and her allies a much needed boost. Now, again, we do have a bunch of offensive base attacks, but you can see that the AP cost is already pretty low on her abilities, and this is where you'll start noticing this on her job screen, where we have abilities with secondary ones linked. So, for instance, this ability, if we were to attack Bina here, or Sephiroth, or Raph, you can see the types of damage that is being done. But clicking through will actually give us a secondary option. Now, this is Sildra's ability. Every time this ability is cast, the attack ability, Sildra will follow up with a secondary attack. Now, what we're getting off of this is essentially a physical and magical damage up for another character that is not Ferris. This is one of the ways that this actually stays balanced, just by the fact that it's not just giving Ferris a massive, like herself, a big boost to potentially heal more damage off of some of her other abilities, but you can see that it is advantageous. This is one of Ferris's big selling points, is the fact that she's doing two things at once with a lot of abilities. Now, we can take a look at some of what her other abilities are doing so far. And while the damage doesn't seem to be incredibly high, it is fairly good considering that we are looking at a fairly top-ranking dark team with high stats and everything. So I would say that it's generally pretty good. And here, taking a look, so this ability is her AoE ability. You can get an idea for about 4,000, about 3. And then, once we cast this is the added effect from Sildra of casting a HP heal on the characters that are within a diamond's pattern around Ferris. And this can keep Ferris's allies healthy. This can keep her healthy. When I was testing it with my basic unit at level 79, about 1,000 points she was healing, whereas now we're getting about 2,500. So her getting into EX and Dream Enhancement range is kind of important. Well, no, it's just important because that's giving her way bigger heals. And to my memory, it also gives an AP restoration effect. So we're going to just be a little bit greedy here. We're not going to cast the resistance one, even though that would be generally nice. What we're going to cast here is the damage one, because we kind of want to see what we're getting off of it. So skip ahead a little bit. We're going to get to Ferris's next turn. And let's take a look just really quickly at her stats. So this is what we are essentially pushing, about a 118 speed, 1482, and 10,000. Not bad overall. See how this has kind of affected her overall damage? Yeah, it's a general improvement. And if we look against other units too, we're dealing pretty good damage. So let's have a little bit of fun while we can. We are going to take a look here, and you can see where Sephiroth, Raph, and Majin Fina are. If we just cast this Limit Burst, let's see what happens. We even got this cool animation, super fast. Well, so Ferris, Sephiroth, and Raph have definitely taken a bit of a hit in terms of speed of how quickly they are going to be able to get to their next turn, which is pretty bad news bears for the other team, but not so bad for us. If you would just get rid of some of these. I'm trying to test things. But you can see that it is a pretty big tempo swing, and if we go over here, and let's just cast Sildra's ability here. Oh no, we want this one, but as you can see, we've run out the time limit on our AP reduction. So that's a little bit sad. So let's go up here. We'll cast this. No, we won't, because we are out of range. Give ourselves Protect and Shell again, as well as some high accuracy. Alright, well, he moved directly into us, so that means we get to do this. You can see the damage that we are outputting against this enemy, and the type of heal that we are getting. And as you can see, not quite optimal placements. We want to heal Majin Fina, so let's just go a little bit further back. And that's essentially how. And you can see that we also got the AP restoration off of that for our character, which is pretty nice. So my final thoughts, because this video is going a little long and we don't want it to run into the 40-minute time limit, I think that Ferris is quite interesting. I'm not saying that she is going to not have some issues. I think one of the biggest questions in my mind is whether or not she can output enough damage to be relevant in like the highest PvP. She definitely seems like more of a PvP character and a difficult content character. She is capable of doing a fair bit and really quite difficult to kill, especially with the right BCs and everything like that. A big question to me is like the DPS aspect. If she can get there, if she can like kill other characters, I think she'll be totally fine. And the interesting combinations that she can work with are pretty cool between ice and water. Like, for instance, I'm already potentially thinking about combinations with Reagan. I'm potentially thinking about combinations with Amnelis. Like, there's a lot of potential of her being a really long-lasting resisty team with certain characters, especially in guild battles and whatnot. She has the accuracy, I think, and I think she has like generally just good stats across the board and feels like one of the more powerful units out there for sure. It's just going to be like testing and figuring out how far she can actually go and whether or not like it still needs VCs to potentially push her even further beyond. Is she straight out broken? Not really. If she was dealing the DPS I kind of wanted her to, which is a little bit higher, then I think she would get there. But yeah, for now, I really like Faris. I think she's really cool. I think it'll be interesting to see where she ends up in about a week's time on my team and whether or not she'll be bubbling. Whether or not she'll get there or not. But yeah, liking her so far. Hopefully this was a good first look at her, and we'll do some more videos, more testing, more scaling in the future. So thanks so much for watching. I have no water in this cup. See you next time.